SteelerFury. SteelerFury.com.
This call is your SteelerFury.com podcast. I'm your host, Bradshaw Ben, a.k.a. Wil Masisak, a.k.a. Accidental Zen on Twitter. And I'm welcoming you to the first episode of our 11th illustrious season as a Steelers podcast. We are, in fact, the longest running Steelers podcast in the world. I was going to say in the Western Hemisphere, but I'm pretty safe to say for the world. And this is my favorite show of the entire year. This is our PreDraft Extravaganza for 2018. And we have got it going on today. Later on in the show, we will create our annual version of the Steelers War Room with a full 7-round mock draft. This is where we discuss all of the potential prospects at each spot, and then our mock GM will make a selection for all 7 picks that the Steelers have in this year's draft. But before that, we're going to talk about the Steelers offseason. We're going to break down the Steelers' needs, and then we'll get a little outside perspective about the draft. But what better than our inside perspective? And speaking of our inside perspective, I think there's probably a really bad joke in there somewhere. He is from Suburban Zone 22. He's fresh back from a fishing trip where I'm sure he caught some perch. His name is Perch. He's with us. How are you, sir?
That's completely inaccurate. But yeah, I'm pretty good. I'm just.
You can start with the corrections. You can start with the corrections.
I've never ever been from Suburban Zone 22. That's wrong. I did not catch perch. I went after trout. 3. If this is really 11 years of this, but I think it's about 18 or 19 of banging the keyboard, arguing with each other there. You guys must be getting pretty damn old. Not me, but you two. Jeez.
Yes, it's the vampire blood you drink. You have like one of those coolers in your basement full of vampire blood. I'm sure. Also with us, our favorite curmudgeon, although he's a little less curmudgeonly this time of year because, he had the Masters and he has the draft and he has the Pens in the Stanley Cup final. Well, he has the Pens in the Stanley Cup playoffs anyway. His name is FC. He is with us. How are you, sir?
I cannot complain, sir. Cannot complain. It is a good time of year.
It's a good time to be you. That's what I think.
Never, but it's a good time of year.
Exactly. Well, let's start with. I like to start this pre-draft podcast with, the state of the Steelers as we see them, and I'm going to give you guys, sort of some time to tell us about what you think the state of the Steelers is in terms of the roster and this offseason, what they've done in free agency, and what it looks like. We'll get to what the needs are going to be. I'll start with you, FC. What did you think about the free agency as far as what the Steelers did this offseason?
It's going to be shocking to a lot of people. I haven't been active on the boards. I'm very, I don't want to say very satisfied, but I'm satisfied. I've always been, a Bostic fan, and Morgan Burnett is not, ever going to remind anybody of Troy Polamalu, but he's a very good safety. Good safety. I wouldn't say very good. And you had to figure that they're going to franchise Bell. I wish they could have got something done. But other than that, we couldn't be very active. It's not like we had a ton of cap room and we're a ton of quality players to cut or players that were over the hill to cut to free up the cap space, it would take to be a factor in free agency.
Yeah, Perch, how about you?
It was completely predictable. They did exactly what I think anybody who's followed it for any length of time knew what they were going to do, where they patched, they bypassed that first wave of free agency, let all the funny money go away, and picked from what the best leftover was at a reasonable price, and filled their roster to the point where they don't have to reach or they're not forced to take any one position in the draft, where they're able to go out and scout wide receivers and quarterbacks for the first, and take one of those guys in the first 2 or 3 rounds, where they don't absolutely have to take a safety and absolutely have to take a linebacker. Now, don't get me wrong, they need one of each of those guys, a good young player early in the draft. But, this is what they do year in, year out, where they have, substantially, upgraded the roster. I wouldn't say substantially, but, went in and filled those major holes, and now they're just, slight question marks. On the downside of that, the damn team is so close. It was an off season where I think a lot of us felt they had to make a splash in free agency and get a major player to completely upgrade one of those spots because the defense just needs that much help. With Bud Dupree, they really don't have a great outside edge rusher between him and Watt. Maybe those guys improve this year. The secondary still lacks a playmaker. And even if they spend the first 2 picks on those guys, are they going to be good enough this year to get the Steelers over the Super Bowl hump? That's my concern. Because I think they went and patched the roster. They didn't really upgrade it.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say, in terms of the Mendoza line of football, which is Sean Spence at inside linebacker, Bostic is better than the Mendoza line, and I think actually,
if he's better than.
I'm just saying, if he's healthy,
right. I think he's going to have a very productive year for this team.
Yeah, I was going to say if he's healthy, I agree with you. I think he's actually a very nice fit. Go ahead, FC.
I think that people are going to be surprised, how decent of a player he is. To the point of, let's say that Ryan Shazier has returned the following season and the Steelers somehow work out a contract with him. I think Vincenzo could be in a little bit of trouble.
Sure. The other thing is it didn't really address the wide receiver position where, obviously at the top, they're in good shape for this year, but looking forward to next year and looking fourth receiver and down, there were definitely some holes there. They didn't, as you said, Perch didn't really address the edge situation. And, running back, they basically brought back the 2 guys they had last year and injured James Conner and Stephen Ridley. It seems like one of those areas might have been a possibility to upgrade, but maybe, it'll be one of those post-draft deals where they will add a body or 2. They like to do that.
Yeah, I want to add one thing on Morgan Burnett, though. I mean, hey, ding dong, the witch is dead. Mike Mitchell's gone. Just in Morgan Burnett is, like FC said, he's a good. I think still a good safety. He's an older guy, but what you'll get from him is a guy who's not out of position. How many touchdowns did the Steelers or big plays that they allow where a safety was just badly out of position making a mental mistake? Or how many times did a safety run down to the box and completely whiff on a tackle? 2 things Morgan Burnett will do for that defense. One, the dude does not miss tackles. He is a very sure-form tackler. He's going to wrap people up. He's not just going to go and lay his head into somebody and hope he knocks them down. And 2, he's not going to be out of position. He's a smart football player. He's a veteran leader. Those 2 things right there, even if he's physically, not some supremely gifted player, are greatly going to help the back end of that defense. So I think that was just a great signing at a good price. And it adds, that is a young secondary. With him and Hayden there now, you've got 2 veteran, savvy, smarter players that are really, I think that's a pretty good foundation if they can get these 2 or 3 young guys that they have with them to step up.
And just quickly, FC, what did you think of this trading of essentially a trade for Robert Golden for Nat Burhay? Burhay might be a better special teamer, maybe, but definitely, neither is going to set the world on fire as a safety on defense downs. What do you see in that move?
It's, nothing. It's trading one apple for another apple. Nothing. I don't see either team really improving their roster. It just gives both players a fresh start.
Yeah. It just seemed like maybe Robert Golden was looking for some place where he could play a little bit, and they weren't really intending on playing him. So, Perch, let me ask you this. You're sort of the Penn State guy, and the Steelers made a move there at the defensive backs coach. I got rid of Carnell Lake. What did you think of that maneuver? Because that we should talk about before we get to the other side of the ball and the big move that they made. Let's talk about the coaching changes.
Yeah, Tom Bradley was a real smart, defensive coordinator back at Penn State. He's bounced around since those days, and NFL is a different game. But what did Carnell Lake ever show? It can't be worse, right? So, not that I'm huge on, I think Tom Bradley's going to make some massive difference in the secondary, but I think he's a better teacher. He's been around the game longer. He's probably got a little bit more. A little bit more tricks up his sleeve to teach, but just Carnell Lake, you can't point to. Same with Jody Porter. Hey, they were great players and we loved them as Steelers, but can you point to one guy that greatly improved or one thing that really, perked up with those guys in charge? So, I think this is better. I was 100% in agreement with FC on the swap of the 2 special teams guys at safety. I think this is better than that. I think that at worst it's a lateral move, but I think more likely it's going to be an upgrade in some way.
Perch, do you think that there's a possibility with the new guy coming in that he will maybe open up some competition, especially I'm thinking Artie Burns and Cam Sutton at one corner spot and maybe Sean Davis and another safety at the free safety position? Do you think that's a little bit of a I'm getting ahead of myself kind of thinking?
I think Mike Tomlin's got his fingerprints so far over all that stuff that a secondary position coach is not going to have that. They may have a suggestion, but I think it's Tomlin's call on that.
Gotcha. So FC on the other side of the ball. Speaking of ding dong, the witch is dead. I got a bigger bell than you, Perch. Todd Haley is gone. It's almost unbelievable to hear myself say that. My heart skipped a little. What do you make of that move on the Steelers' offensive side? I assume that you like it.
Yeah. See, with the hires of Carl Dunbar and Tom Bradley, both are great teachers. Dunbar's got a rep around the NFL, and Tom Bradley is just everyone that you read or you hear speak about Tom Bradley talking about teaching and just loyal and smart and intelligent. At this point, I think Randy Fichtner's job is to basically go to Ben. Ben, what do you like? What do you want? What do you want the direction of this offense to be? And I think a lot of people are going to say that's bullshit. Ben's got a year or two left. Well, we got a 1 or 2 year window for the Super Bowl. So I think that you're going to see a lot of stuff that Ben likes. And there's nothing wrong with that. The running game, that's pretty much, that'll be a Munchak, Fichtner, enterprise together. The big thing is Fichtner supposedly got a really good rhythm as a play caller. He hasn't done a ton of it. He did it at Memphis. And that was pretty much my biggest problem with Todd Haley wasn't play design. It was one thing didn't, set up another, it sets up another, and boom, touchdown. There was just no rhyme or reason at times. So, I'm optimistic. Time will tell. And that's the only, Fichtner doesn't have anything that, you can really fall back on other than being the play caller at Memphis where he was very good.
Yeah, I was going to say that one thing I noticed about his Memphis tape is, man, he loved changing personnel and formation, to the point of an extreme almost. And that may have had more to do with the personnel that he had to work with at Memphis. I think that they had a little bit of weakness on offensive line, and a lot of times he was using things like a lot of running back screens and movement to be able to protect his offensive line a little, maybe. But I know that he has said he's on record, as saying that he really likes to rotate personnel and use them in different ways. I think we might, have been one of the teams in the NFL who rotated personnel the least on offense the last couple of years. And as Perch said, hard to know if that's a Mike Tomlin thing or that was a Todd Haley thing. But I feel like there's at least an opening to maybe use some of that offensive depth at the skill positions. That's one thing. The other thing is, you didn't mention, I kind of think that there might be more of a whiteboard value add for Fichtner as far as the red zone is concerned. It feels like that was always a little bit of a weakness of Haley's game. Man, they were, they had a lot of, matchup football that worked out really well in between the 20s. And when we got in closer to the end zone, it just didn't look like they had a great plan. Some of that is play calling maybe, but some of it I think is just what you desire to do and how how you're set up to work in the red zone. So that's something I'm a little bit hopeful for. Perch, you want to weigh on the offensive side at all?
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing is the rapport between Ben and Fichtner is very good, and he's been here through the last two offensive coordinators. So he's going to know what Ben likes. Ben's going to tell him what he likes. It seems like, this is a move that was handpicked by Ben, and if you're following what's going around, at least the rumors of what's going on up in Green Bay and over in New England, where you have the other two major star quarterbacks in the league that are, throwing a fit right now, trying to throw their weight around, looking at towards the end of their career, and they want more say in personnel and coaching matters and play calling. Ben's kind of got that. And it kind of looks like those two are kind of fighting for the same thing. But, I think that there is going to be, kind of getting back to more of that intermediate passing game that was so good under Arians that kind of went away a little bit with Haley, and I think they're still going to keep some of the check down stuff that Haley brought. So, that is the hope too, is that just the rhythm of the play calling gets better, because Haley, he was a pretty good offensive coordinator. The ideas that he had were smart and fit the modern NFL. It's just the rhythm and the situational football play calls that he made that made you want to bang your head off the wall, and he never got it. It never got better. So, I think it's for the best. I think it's probably the coaching move that's, gets us the most excited for this upcoming season.
Sure. Well, let's talk now about the Steelers' draft needs as we see them. FC, I'm going to start with you. What do you think are the top? Like, what do we? Is it a situation where we don't really have like desperate needs, but we have a couple of strong ones? How do you see it?
We have a desperate need for a lot of depth, and that might sound kind of lame. We definitely need an outside linebacker. We definitely need an inside linebacker. We definitely need a safety. Hybrid would be preferred, a player that can play both free and strong. We need an offensive tackle. Could use a tight end. Definitely need a wide receiver. Definitely need a running back. The question is how do you prioritize those things? And we probably could make a list. You could have told us before the show to make a list of our top 5 needs, and we could have 5 lists that are completely different, but all could be right. It's hard to tell. You can't guess injuries, and the Steelers don't have a lot of roster depth. We are very top-heavy, very strong top-heavy. But
well, let me ask a follow-up question.
Sure.
Give me the 2 deepest positions maybe 3 deepest positions on the team, because I got a pretty good idea what I think they are.
You're going to say, I think most people would get defensive line. One. The second might be cornerback, as funny as that sounds, just with, in the draft last year. And number 3, on paper, maybe tight end, because of having, 4 guys that could possibly make the roster.
Yeah, I was going to say offensive line maybe too, but that is
right.
It does get a little skinny after the first 6.
And people don't realize how important Hubbard actually was. He was actually a very good player, and he got paid by it.
Yeah, and it looks like he's going to be starter there. So it seems like it was a good move for him. Perch, what about you? I mean, I'm curious what you think in terms of I agree with FC about the positions that seem to have more depth, but that doesn't mean they necessarily don't need an upgrade at some point. Are you the same way in terms of outside and inside linebacker and safety?
Well, I agree with everything FC said, and I disagree with everything FC said. So which makes for a better show? Which way would you like me to take it?
Oh, man, it's better when we disagree, I think.
All right.
Let's go with the disagree.
We're far away. We're far away. We're not in the same room, We're not in the same room, so disagreement is useful because, you can't really face any damages from the other guy.
No, I mean, I guess basically what the point I'm trying to make with that ridiculous statement was, if you can look at it 2 different ways. One, you can look at it long term. One, you can look at it as let's win a Super Bowl in the next 2 or 3 years. If you really, really care about the next year, next 2 years, next 3 years, inside linebacker, outside linebacker, and safety. You got those. That's like, defense. What do we complain about at the end of the year? The Jags just lit us up for all these points. We can't stop the run. You struggle against the pass against good teams. You got to improve the defense, right? Okay, if you do that, look down the road, Martavis Bryant and Le'Veon Bell could be playing somewhere else next year. And do you want to, basically end Ben's career with rookies, filling in for those positions? So I see the issue there. Tight end, I wouldn't say it's got potential, but there's not a real stud or star player there. And, just the depth of running back. So FC is definitely right. Like you said, you can probably just go up to the draft board and the next quarterback. If one of those guys, if they identify a guy who's a legitimate future starting quarterback in the league and he falls to him in the first round, you might have to look at that. So, yeah, it's just like FC said, you can kind of go into this draft and take the best player available, regardless of position, each round to improve your depth, and it wouldn't be a bad thing. But if you're trying to win right now, it's like, you got to make some kind of splash on defense. The same thing with free agency. Yeah, they got Morgan Burnett and Bostic. If they can get 1 or 2 more players in the draft, I think it's what most Steelers fans want to see is improve that defense. Make it good, not just average.
Right. Well, okay. two more things on this. One, and I'll make a statement, FC, and that is the weakest starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers going into 2018 as of right now would be either Sean Davis. Sean Davis was my number one choice, or Artie Burns be a possibility. But I'm going to say it's Sean Davis. The question is, do you think going into year 3 that Sean Davis can improve enough of his faults and the things that he has not been as successful at in order to not be their worst starter? That was my question.
Yes. Just because of maybe the position change. Yes, because of Tom Bradley being a high-quality teacher, maybe he'll be able to get through and explain to the young man, along with Morgan Burnett. You hope that, the two things could maybe, because Sean Davis has guts and he has heart and he has ability. He just doesn't trust his eyes. And a lot of the problem is mental, meaning tape work, fundamentals, things like that. So I think those can be improved upon. And then, but he could also be the guy that loses his job in camp to a first or second round draft pick.
Sure. So Perch, to me, Sean Davis, the biggest liability that he has is his ability to do off-man coverage successfully. Because when you're the free safety, you in quarters, when you're in the red zone, this kind of situation, that's the free safety often has to bounce out and has responsibility for a guy basically to play off-man coverage because can't get up and bump on him because he still has some deep responsibilities. But on the other hand, he's still responsible for that guy that runs a seam or something underneath him. And that was the thing on tape I felt the last 2 years that Sean Davis, anytime he got put in that situation, Mike Mitchell, we knew wasn't good at that. They protected him a little bit, but Sean Davis just wasn't very good at that. Is FC right that is more of a mental thing, that if he anticipates the routes better and learns a little bit more about what to key, that maybe he can improve at that? I mean, or is that something he's never going to be that good at?
Well, first of all, I'm still trying to figure out how Bud Dupree isn't the worst starter on the roster, but I'll skip that since that's not the topic.
Well, okay, wait, hang on. I'll answer that. Okay, I'll play it from the Steelers advocate position and even my own advocate. I think Dupree is doing largely what they're asking him to do. Now, maybe they only ask him to do that because
get pancaked by a tight end. The hell they ask?
Well, but that's okay. That's not something you want to have happen ever. But on the other hand, he's like he is versatile. I think he's actually pretty good at most of the things they ask him to do. And in terms of I think it's intentional what he does with pass rush in terms of trying to funnel towards those pass rushers in the middle. And they set an all-time record for sacks, team record for sacks last year. So I don't think he's like a big failure. I just think that he is, miles away from being what we would consider to be an above-average starter at edge. But I still don't think he's as bad as Sean Davis at free safety. So that being said, go ahead and answer.
Shifting back to David, and I watched him a lot in college. Remember, the advantage or the plus of him or the hope for him, he was a corner in college. He played a lot of corner. He's got the physical tools and the ability to cover people as above average as a free safety if he gets the mental part of it down, if he knows where he's supposed to be and does it. He did make some plays on the ball when he was playing deep last year. My biggest problem with him was, I think he had that shoulder injury. And anytime he had to run down to the box, from more of a strong safety position and hit a running back and make a tackle, he would olay or just put his opposite shoulder in and he missed a ton of tackles. So I think, when I talk about Morgan Burnett improving the back end, that's the thing that he's really going to improve. Now, shifting Sean Davis to more deep responsibility, he's got that plus athleticism. He's built like a corner. He's played corner in college. And, if he gets the middle part of it down, if he learns his position and understands where he's supposed to be, I think that's his best fit in the NFL is that deep free safety. So if it clicks, he could be very good there. If it doesn't click, he could be, like FC said, on the bench. So it's a big question mark for sure.
Hey, okay. That's definitely a possibility. He's still young, still year 3. Same with Artie Burns. Even younger.
Can I throw a question at you, Mr. B2B?
Absolutely.
Do you think that the fine young lad, Brian Allen, that we drafted out of Utah, do you think he has any chance of being able to be converted to a free safety?
I think Strong might be a better job for him, but I think it's possible. Yes, I mean, to me, ideally he's an outside long corner. But
right.
Go ahead.
See, I liked his hits at corner. A lot of people didn't. I like his ability to open up and really carry ground, and I think he actually, that would not be a shocking thing. I mentioned before that I think that we might have our future free safety. It doesn't work out, and that would be one player that I think could actually make the move because good ball skills. He got guts as well. He's willing to support in the run game. And I really like how he can open up and, make plays on the ball and eat up ground, to get to the deep half, to get to, the deep third. 6'3" height, I like the reach and length, and I like that he competes for the ball. So
yeah, I really, really liked the prospect last year, and I'm excited to see year 2, some development from him. I mean, if it were still Cornell Lake, I'd be worried about him developing anybody, but maybe this will help, him. Got the skills. You're right. He's got the wheels to do that for sure. Hey, neither of you, when we talked about his team needs, mentioned in a way what I think is the biggest need that the team has, particularly on defense, and that is playmakers. With Ryan Shazier being gone, Troy Polamalu being long retired now, I'm just not really sure where the playmakers are. Like it's kind of like you got the guys in the trenches that seem to battle and can make a lot of plays, and you have versatile edge guys that you seem to like for the new NFL that are capable of at least being good role players in that role. And you might even have good corners right now and some upgrades at safety. I just don't see where the splash play is going to come from, Perch. That to me is the biggest thing that's missing.
Well, I'll tell you what. If they just line up in the right damn position and do their damn job and don't miss tackles, no, I'm 100% serious. If they just do what they're supposed to, it's a Super Bowl team. Just beat a block once in a while. We don't need somebody special. We don't need somebody flying around getting 10 interceptions. It'd be great. This team can be a Super Bowl team if they all play their position, if they don't miss tackles, if they play their assignments. That's what they need. They need 11 guys plus backups that are smart, savvy football players. They can let that offense score 30 and win. I mean, look at how many points they give up when they lose playoff games. They're averaging like 36 against.
Yeah, that's bad.
If they could just be pretty good in the playoffs and hold a team to 23, they're going to win. They're going to win all the games.
Okay, but Perch, when is the last time that a Pittsburgh Steelers team went to the Super Bowl, let alone went to the Super Bowl without at least one really dynamic playmaker on defense? I mean, the answer, never.
When's the last? I don't know, 79. I mean, was there anybody left at that point that was still at the top of their game? And look at the offense.
Yeah, Lambert was still there.
Not again. Fantastic from last year. Who I was good with Mr. Watt. On Twitter, I've liked a page, Advanced Athletes. It's a training, a group of people that go around and train. And I happened to pick up on TJ Watt in the background. And they're just like, this guy's being interviewed, and you just see TJ Watt in the background working. And, I said to myself, you may got this wrong here with this Mr. Watt kid, because from what I'm seeing, this young man is working awful fucking hard. And he's growing in that position, meaning he's still a 22-year-old lad. What I'm saying is I think TJ Watt is going to actually be a far better NFL football player than I did it this time last year, and even in January. And I'm starting to buy in a little bit there. Now, Bud Dupree is a problem. Bostic, Vincenzo Williams will kind of hit you He'll put it on. He's limited in what he can do, but what he does well, and I'm a fan of Bostic's the big thing. It's, he has not showed to be a huge playmaker, but, maybe Stephen too and Cameron Hayward will be the big playmakers because, instead of just dominating with the amount of pressures they get, because even though the Steelers had a ton of sacks last year, they also had a ton of pressures where they didn't finish. If that coverage is a little bit tighter, the coverages aren't dropped, big bodies on quarterback, good thing. That's the quarterback must go down and must go down hard. Well, as long as this is a tackle game, is always going to be a true statement.
Well, and this should be pointed out that apparently Sean Davis, Stephon Tuitt, and Hargrave all had injuries that they played through for nearly the entire year last year. So, in theory, if they get healthy and played,
actually had a pectoral muscle off the bone. When they said that he blew his pec, and everyone's like, it was supposedly blown off the bone, and he had surgery to have it reconnected after the season. So
yeah, and I guess Hargrave had a shoulder injury week 1 or something like that last year as well. So in theory, could pick up a little bit. And to Perch's point, I actually, I pushed him on it, but it's true. With the offensive firepower that they have, in theory, they could have a defense with just solid starters who do their job, much like the New England Patriots model. I just had to throw up on my mouth a little. Sorry. That probably would be enough to make them a Super Bowl team. All right. So for this segment, I think we'll talk a little bit about just in general what's going on with the NFL draft. FC, we so rarely have a chance to just talk something that's not totally Steelers centric. And the draft is one of those things. I'm sure you have opinions about all of the top prospects. Let's start with the quarterbacks. I have heard people say they think the quarterbacks in this draft it's like one of those, 1983 quarterback classes. I'm not sure that they're terrible, but I think maybe they're a little overhyped. Are you on that train, or you think there's one or two that you really like? How do you stack up the quarterbacks?
Right now, I really don't like any of the quarterbacks. I won't be shocked if 3 or 4 of them end up being good NFL starters. I'm not saying franchise quarterbacks or future Hall of Famers. The funny thing is generally you could say, okay, it's going to be, Darnold, Rosen, and Allen. But it could be, Mayfield, Jackson, and the young man from Oklahoma State, Mason Rudolph. This draft is I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of great players come out of it. I don't know if I can name you those great players. It's at every position, not only quarterback. Saquon Barkley's the surefire number 1 running back. But at other positions, you can't really say that. I know that we're sticking with quarterbacks, but we'll just take defensive tackle. Vita Veda's the best defensive tackle available. Maybe not. It's not a surefire thing.
Well, this is what I was going to get at. Even with quarterbacks, it's all about fit. It's really hard to rank them especially quarterbacks, without thinking about where they're going to go. They'd be the most successful. Okay, I've heard this. Everybody's, top draft rumors, Baker Mayfield from Oklahoma going to the Jets because their offensive coordinator runs an offense that's similar to what he ran, and he would totally fit there. I actually kind of get that. It wouldn't surprise me if he were the second quarterback taken, even if he's not necessarily the second best on paper, because of that sort of thing. I guess, the most polarizing one is Josh Allen. Where do you come down with Josh Allen in general, and where do you think the fit is for him?
I think that Josh Allen has a lot of traits of 2 quarterbacks I've seen. I've studied Josh Allen. I didn't want to like him. I generally will not touch a quarterback that's not a winner. And I understand he was a quarterback at Wyoming, and they had inferior talent week in and week out. I love the arm strength. I don't like the accuracy. It's very rarely that you see a college quarterback become more accurate as a pro. You could say Matthew Stafford did. You could say Joe Flacco did. But the sub 50% completion percentage for Allen really scares me. But I love the athleticism. I love the willingness to work. Everyone says that he's knocked interviews completely out of the ballpark. He tested well. He was great on the board. Great kid. But that doesn't make you an NFL starter. And Baker Mayfield.
I actually have grown to like Baker Mayfield more during the draft process than I did play on the field, which is extremely rare for me. I don't think Baker Mayfield's going to be for every team, for every city. He's got a little too much swashbuckler, too much panache maybe to him, where I think he could rub some cities the wrong way. For an example, I don't think Baker Mayfield would fit the city of Pittsburgh very well because, you know, I don't want to say that Pittsburgh's a little bit of a caustic city, but the fan base, we will turn pretty quickly. Cliff Stout, Martin Malone, Neil O'Donnell, Tommy Maddox, real quick.
Cordell Stewart.
Yeah, I didn't even want to go there. So when you say fit, it goes beyond sometimes a system fit. If you bring a guy in and you just know that it's going to be an uphill battle with the fan base, I don't know if he can take that player. It's also a business at the end of the day, and you got to sell tickets.
Yeah. I mean, that's you summed it up pretty much exactly right. You said you like quarterbacks who are winners, or you don't like to choose a quarterback that hasn't won very much. So I'm going to guess that Josh Rosen is not at the top of your quarterback list.
I really hate his personality. I think he's a prima donna, and whenever Jim Mora didn't have the best things to say about him, and I'm not a very big fan of Jim Mora on the NFL Network. Tom Bradley really wouldn't comment, and that scares me. That scares me about a player, because Tom Bradley's Western Pennsylvania. I can find something good to say just about anybody, about anyone to shine you on, and he didn't really seem like he was willing to even give the effort to shine you on about him. If I had to pick a quarterback number one overall in this draft, I probably would take Leinart. There we go. Darnold. I'm being sarcastic with that. I think second quarterback I probably would take would be Allen. And third quarterback I probably would take would be Mayfield. Fourth quarterback I'd take would be Rudolph.
Yeah, because you need a guy.
I'd probably take Jackson in front of Rosen, because the thing I like about Lamar Jackson that I don't think a lot of people get is he's going to need at least a year, probably 2 years of just fundamental and coaching work. He got a really live arm. It's whippy. Arm strength-wise, they compared him to Mahomes last year. That shocked me.
Yeah.
But you see zip on his ball. His footwork's terrible. He's going to really have to, if he's willing to take the master's program and just buy in and work and throw and work and throw every day and absorb everything, he could be the first guy that filled what Johnny Manziel was supposed to be. I guess a smaller version of Cam Newton. Maybe I think he could have a higher career path than Michael Vick, and I'm saying Michael Vick without the dogfighting issues or anything like that.
Right. Well, I mean, that's pretty good praise. It's just he has to go to a team where they can afford to be patient. The thing about that number one pick, I've been saying for 2 years now, is you got to make a bold choice there and try to get somebody who's good enough and has enough swagger to take that team out of the doldrums, really, because they're looking for some guy to make some plays that haven't been made there for a while. That's really going to change the culture. And that's why I say, taking a really safe quarterback choice there, to me, isn't necessarily the best thing. But I agree with you. Darnold is probably the balance of a little bit safer than Allen and has some upside to him. I know there are certain people who love Darnold, who thinks he's the number one quarterback in the draft. So
I know a lot of people will tell you would be the number one quarterback for the last few drafts.
Yeah, I mean, there's no Mahomes. Mahomes is the best guy, at least back to Newton and Luck, but maybe even farther than that. But
how much do you like Carson Wentz?
I like Carson Wentz. I think he was a fit. If he goes to a different team, he might not have had that kind of success. I like his moxie a lot, but
sure,
he's not exactly like a traditional NFL quarterback sitting in the pocket picking you apart.
Do you think he could have success if the Rams would have taken him number one, and the Eagles would have ended up taking Jared Goff? Just out of curiosity.
Yes, mostly because I think, in general, I think Wentz is a better player than Goff. and Goff had the advantage of having a guy in his ear. That was a really crazy thing.
He also had the disadvantage. He also had the disadvantage of having Jeff Fisher for that year.
It's true, that could ruin any quarterback. Let's move on for a second. Who's your your favorite prospect in this draft who's considered to be a first round pick?
That's considered a first round pick?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go with Barkley because that's a little bit too safe. I really like Alexander, the cornerback from Louisville, which is shocking. I'm generally not a corner type of guy. I love the way he plays zone. I love the way he plays bump. He reminds me a little bit of Ty Law, who is just often underappreciated. But hey, guess what? He can cover inside. He can cover the slot. He's great against the run. Great in zone, great in man. Will play special teams. Loves the game of football. On this fabulous character, football character especially. So I would probably say Jair Alexander, cornerback from Louisville. I think he's not a guy that you hear talked about a ton, and I think that he's a really nice corner. I like him more than Ward from Ohio State. Probably the guy that I would say is a tweener, first or second round pick. I think the best film for any college player I've seen since it'll be Aaron Donald from Pitt would be the best I've seen in the last 5 to 10 years. Number 2 is going to be Harrison Phillips from Stanford. Boy, do I love the kid. It's just he's not a huge need for the Steelers. Especially if you think Hargrave's injury is recoverable from. If you tell me that Hargrave's going to have issues again, I'd love the Steelers to bail down to 34 or 36 and take Harrison Phillips because that film don't lie. That play, the fundamentals, what he has, unless he gets two Mike Quick type knee injuries at the same time and blows out both his ACLs, I can see no way that he is not a good NFL player. And I'm not going to say he's going to be Aaron Donald in the NFL. No one is going to have that type of production. I mean, he's not going to be J.J. Watt, but I could definitely see him being a similar player to Fletcher Cox, where he's dominant for different reasons than Fletcher Cox is. Fletcher Cox is 6'5", 290, 34-inch arms, stud. And where Harrison Phillips, is just a whirling dervish. He's got good, physical measurables, but serious wrestling background. And he is a war machine. He absolutely is. There's no quit to him. If anybody loves Quentin Nelson, if Quentin Nelson's your guy, Notre Dame Stanford last 2 years is available readily on the internet. I mean, if Quentin Nelson's a top 5 pick, you're not going to tell me that Harrison Phillips is not a top 15 pick. Let's just put it that way.
Well, the thing I liked about Harrison Phillips also is he's a nose tackle that never came off the field and didn't.
81 solo tackles from a defensive tackle, an interior defense. 81 solo tackles.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. Okay, well, let's talk for a second. I guess that the guy you think is the most overrated of the first-round prospects expected to go highly is Marcus Davenport from Texas San Antonio. Am I right?
I'm not a humongous fan of Davenport. I've heard him compared to Jadeveon Clowney. I've heard things like that. What I see at his best, he's going to be Melvin Ingramish, who also played at South Carolina, which is pretty. I mean, I think that if you told the team that drafted Marcus Davenport, you're going to get a similar type, career as Melvin Ingram, I don't think they'd be overly disappointed.
I just have the sense that he's not as you expected him to be really sudden and athletic and something different, and it's like he looked like a pretty good pass rusher in the Senior Bowl in a sort of vanilla kind of setup, but I'm not sure how much that translates. He definitely did well there.
With Davenport, the big thing is, and you heard it from coaches and scouts, is that he continuously took steps and he really took the coaching, and that's a big thing for a player. Is you've got to continue to develop. It's taking the next step. A player that I think is overrated that is getting pushed upwards. I'm not the biggest fan of Quentin Nelson. If you're going to take an offensive guard in the top 10 picks of the NFL draft, I'm expecting John Hanna or Larry Allen. I don't want to say that there's players that are overrated. Like Quentin Nelson being a top 5, top 10 pick. I think that's his value is being,
elevated a little bit much. I don't think he's going to be a much better offensive guard than a Zach Martin or a David DeCastro. Both those players were taken in the early to mid-20s.
What would be your guess for a surprise pick in round one?
Probably the player that has the most wide variety on would be Brian O'Neill, the offensive tackle from Pitt. And I could see him being drafted way earlier than anybody ever thinks. New England. What's New England going to do at left tackle this year? And I look at Brian O'Neill and I see Nate Solder. A little bit shorter. I see Nate Solder. So I guess that would probably send some shockwaves. It's not like Belichick hasn't taken, a rugby player in the third round, special teams rugby player in the third round, in the past.
Yeah, first is a little rich, but yeah, we'll see. We shall see. Okay, I'm not sure. My only surprise pick for the first round sort of evaporated. I thought that Okoronkwo from Oklahoma to the Rams would have been a thing in round one because they don't have a second round pick. But they traded that pick away. So I don't see that happening anymore. I guess we'll have to wait till draft night. I'm sure there, every year there's at least 2 or 3, maybe an extra quarterback. Maybe, there'll be 6 quarterbacks taken in round one or something crazy.
That wouldn't shock me. Actually, that wouldn't shock me very much just because of teams' overall need for it. And also, this wouldn't surprise me too much if this is the year the Steelers maybe trade back 4 or 5 spots. I mean, I know that we say it every year. They're in prime position. 28 is a prime place for a team that really loves Mason Rudolph or loves Jackson from Louisville.
Getting that slotted contract in an extra year, 5, the 5th year option for a quarterback makes a team, anxious to trade up out of 2 into 1 at 28 maybe. So
absolutely. Yeah. Can I ask you a question or two?
Sure.
Who's your favorite player in this draft that's not going to be a first-round pick?
Shaquem Griffin.
Yeah, that's good. Whenever you have my 80-year-old father saying, you know what, we should draft this Griffin kid, there's something to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think there's a spot for him for the Steelers, but Saran Neal, that kid from Jacksonville State.
Yeah.
He's a fun player, man. I love that. There's a clip that's circulating of him. He's in coverage coming up on coverage. The tight end catches it underneath him, and he just plows this 260-pound tight end. The guy goes flying backwards. He's a little guy too.
Yeah, I like the running back from Coastal Carolina. I wish I had his name. I'm horrible with names, but anyone that's listening to this, if you're looking for a small school running back, even non-Steeler, a running back that could just this young man will blow your mind with his physicality and his speed and his cutting ability. I'm not saying he's ever going to be a great player in the NFL.
Well, you should be able to remember his name. It's as a Steelers fan. He's Abercrombie.
There you go. Exactly. And I don't think he's related to Walter Abercrombie.
No, Oshamar Abercrombie. Yeah.
Yes. Wow. He's Barry Foster, a little bit Barry Foster-ish, where I think he might have more top-end speed.
Yeah. And actually, the other guy we didn't talk about that I love is Sky Moore. I mean, I don't really understand. I guess, medicals maybe drive him down a little bit, but I'm not really sure. I think this is an NFL draft general thing that these, guys who, what's the word I'm looking for? If you play on a defense that's not a good defense overall, the way you are viewed, even if you're a great player on that defense, is that you're not a prospect. It totally affects the draft posture if you're the best player on a bad defense versus a big difference maker on a good defense. Because Sky Moore plays a position so much better than, say, Darius Leonard, who's a small school guy from the same state who's kind of a similar player. And Sky Moore's playing in the best conference in the world and leading his team in tackles 4 years. 14 interceptions. I don't really understand why one guy is considered to be threatening to be a second or third round pick and the other guy might not get drafted. That doesn't make any sense.
Because the cervical stenosis people are concerned about. He's passed every medical. He went and he had surgery done on his neck and back, and he's got a clean bill of health. I mean, he's right up the road from here, and from me in Columbia, South Carolina. And
this is what I'll say about him. This is probably the best thing I can say about him. I have not seen a smarter college player in a long time. From a football standpoint, he may not be able to spell cat, but I'll put it this way: he can cover, he can run, and he can read a blocking scheme. I'm not, and he could, for all I know, he could be a Rhodes Scholar. What I'm saying is, football. He's on the field. I don't want to call him an Einstein, but he's on the field. He's pretty damn smart. He's always in position and he's always hustling.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, man. Thanks for that overview of the draft that we don't usually get to talk about. We could probably do that for another hour. All right, so coming up, it's the Steelers' full 7-round mock draft war room, and that will happen in part 2 of the PreDraft Extravaganza. That's in the next episode, so stay tuned. That's all for part 1 of the PreDraft Extravaganza. See you for part 2 coming up the next episode. Thanks to my great cohorts, FC and Perch, and thank you to all of you for tuning in and supporting the show. Don't forget, you can support this podcast and other great content at patreon.com. If you look for Wil Masisak, that's WILMASISAK, 1 L and Will. More podcasts and draft content are available to you at SteelerFuryPodcast.com. You can also subscribe to the podcast at iTunes, Google Play, and visit our YouTube channel. Look for SteelerFury Podcast. Until then, this is your host, Bradshaw Ben, a.k.a. Wil Masisak, a.k.a. Accidental Zen on Twitter, saying, go get 'em, Steelers.
Steeler